Hello, everybody. Today we are going to be unraveling a rather complex topic when it comes to speaking about it, as I don't really want to start any beef with any particular specific places or anything like that, but it is something that felt quite close to my own faith and spirituality, and something that I feel like should be addressed by more people. And this video is entirely unscripted, so if I misspeak or do quite a bit of pausing or I go off on a tangent, that would be in particular why. Anyway, a couple of years ago, this is quite an old topic actually. If I look at a lot of places online, it has gotten better. A couple of years ago, people have gotten obsessed with labeling Lilith as being Jewish and therefore it being Jewish appropriation to worship or otherwise approach Lilith. The fact that we have selected a singular figure of a demon that doesn't feature prominently in the religion in question is definitely quite a take, and there has been quite a few people asking if it's because she is female. Why, in particular, that specific demon that practically does not feature anywhere at all? We are gonna talk about the whole problem in depth today, and let me start by saying that I don't particularly like the current world's obsession with talking about appropriation, considering that there's quite a bit of sensitivity involved, and a lot of the times the most bizarre elements will be just marked as belonging to a specific faith or culture, and taking inspiration has become banned. A lot of elements that are a lot more widespread than one would choose to believe suddenly gets socially seen as wrong or as belonging only to one race or one culture, to a point where other cultures get banned from practicing their own practices. Sometimes the oversensitivity also affects people negatively that is supposed to be protecting. If I was to just quickly give some examples, for example, a dream catcher is not exclusive to Native Americans. It's actually even in Eastern Europe as a practice that dates quite a bit back. So when internet people suddenly have decided that dream catchers are denied to anyone but Native Americans, that has left a lot of other countries scratching their heads going, what? It's the same as, oh, sage is banned. Well, I know that you're most likely talking about white sage, but sage in itself is actually quite a wildly spread plant. You can find sage in a lot of parts of the world. And speaking about white sage, when people started going only Native Americans should use white sage in smudging, Native American businesses that used to sustain themselves and sustain communities by selling sage have taken quite a hit, and it directly impacted the community that the whole internet outrage was supposed to protect. I think we are in a decade where we're trying to draw boundaries, trying to find our own identity, trying to find a way to coexist in a big wide world while still preserving who we are and who we are culturally and where we come from. And that's all good and well, but a lot of current discourse just has so much growing pains that it is very hard to talk about it. Thankfully, in recent times, cultural appropriation has also not been the only term used. We now also have cultural appreciation, which is engaging in another culture in a kind and a respectful manner. So we are once again moving to a point where we can share culture without it being a societal taboo. There's just so much arguments there, honeys. I have made a much more simplistic video on that before. I'm trying to be a lot more open and less contrarian these days because it helps everybody when issues are discussed more in depth and when more points of view are being taken into account, because there's no real reason to be rude to people unless, of course, they will never stop being rude to you. Anyway, this is one of the examples of, okay, cultural appropriation or cultural appreciation or sacrilege. 2018 had a fashion exhibit called Heavenly Bodies. It has been exhibited. It has taken heavy inspiration from Catholicism. Mind you, all of the fashion brands that took part in it were Catholic, pretty much, or grew up Christian, but it has sparked a huge outrage and a scandal of, can people that aren't Christian do things like wear crosses? And is this sacrilege considering that they're taking the Pope's uniform and turning it into fashion? This is what I mean when I say that there is a lot of growing pains and a lot of nasty discourse happening around this whole thing in the past couple of years. I feel like by the time we're done and we have gotten out of it, it will be better for everybody. But anyway, back to the topic at hand. We are trying to be very, very nice and understanding, okay? But so I moderate for a community called Demonolatry Practices. I do quite a lot of videos about demons and demonolatry in general. That is part of my channel's identity, and recently we had to remove a subreddit off our recommendeds just because how they were treating our members. Namely, people that worship and work with Lilith. We didn't know as a subreddit, but they have this group of people have classed practically whole of demonolatry as anti-Semitic a couple of years ago, and they just kind of forgot to tell us. It's to a point where I actually had to outreach to their mods and going, okay, I understand you don't want any demon worshippers among you. Look, if people come and post about Lilith and you're already catching it into auto mod and banning them, could you just send them to us or to other subreddits that would be more relevant to them? Like the Lilith subreddit, for example, sounds like a very relevant place to send people that want to talk about Lilith. I don't know about you, but that's just my opinion. I was told that as we're very horrible people, they won't be doing that. And I was like, okay, a situation that I should leave alone and just put it aside. But it kind of got stuck with me because this has been over a week ago now. Now, mind you, once again, this attitude is not necessarily all that popular these days. I did check several social media platforms. If you go and type in, is Lilith closed? Or Lilith closed? Or Lilith is closed on TikTok and YouTube and all the other places, all you have, as well as quite a few Jewish people going, what? What? Mostly because Lilith doesn't originate in Judaism. She's not really in the Torah. There is a story that links two separate how people were created stories that was effectively a Jewish folktale. And after a while, in the Middle Ages, one of the characters in it ended up being called Lilith of Lilitu, the storm demons, or Lilin. It's a legion. She's not even like singular, and even in Jewish culture, she's not treated as singular. And there's even arguments that, well, one version is singular and the other one is not. No, none of them are actually singular. Both of them are plural. Lilith is not one person, and the amount of names that are used in defensive talismans. Once again, I'm heading off on a tangent, so let's begin at the beginning, okay? I'm gonna analyze their sources. I'm gonna read what sources the pagan Reddit has to begin with, and we're just gonna talk about it, okay? We're just talking. By the way, no hate. No sending hate to this community. There's absolutely no reason to go and post there. They don't want this content. They don't want this content. We don't need to be there. We don't need to talk about it. I am talking about it because it doesn't sit well with me, so I'm already breaking my own rule. But I don't want to be mean to them. They have a right to their own community, and they can set whatever rules they want. It's just, I honestly hate when small groups of people get labeled mean things because other people on the internet got outraged about something that didn't need to be outraged, that called a lot of question marks into the heads of people that are even like belonging to the communities that the outrage is about. But because of how loud they are, it gets accepted as the norm. It's kind of, culture is a very weird thing. Kind of like how if you call Latina people Latinx, they might actually get offended. But there were a few groups that decided that Latinx is the inclusive term, and that is how these people should be called. So even if it goes against what they themselves want, they have less influence on their culture than some very loud person online. And that's just, it's a bit mind-blowing, not gonna lie. So anyway, section upon Lilith. Contrary to popular opinion, Lilith is not a pagan deity. She's Jewish. Well, Lilith is not really a deity, but she's not really Jewish. We are gonna be doing quite a bit of reading, so be prepared. I have this very nice, completely frozen McDonald's cola. My husband bought me McDonald's when he got out today in the morning, and in order to keep the drinks from spilling and to keep the drinks fresh, he put them in the fridge and it completely froze. So I am drinking a ice cube that is cola flavored. And Jewish people have asked us to stop using her as a goddess, because she isn't one and never was. She isn't really a goddess, but — quotation on Jewish people? Was it rabbis? Was it someone that's influential in the community and is seen as a learned person of religion, or was it random Jewish people? Actually, here's a better question. Were those people even Jewish, and what makes them, I don't know, responsible for their whole religion and culture? Can I stand up and make statements about demonolatry or Luciferianism and claim that they apply to a large group of people that were never even consulted on this? What grants the person this power? Is it because they're on a popular social media platform? Is it because they're young and pretty? What makes you so influential that you can just change or ban a whole group of people from worshipping what they want to worship? I would really love to see some studies on this, on who controls as to how these media shifts and what is acceptable and what isn't changes. And what is like the starting influence of every single shift? I don't think that we're gonna like find any correlation of it's the Bob. Bob is in control of everything, but I do wonder how much popularity, prettiness, and youth play into this. Like, can you make these statements while not even like being a part of those specific communities and create actual change that does not benefit anybody? And is that what happens? I would love to hear a study on that. The fetishization leads to rampant anti-Semitism and hinders Jewish people from accessing their own culture. Excuse me, what? No one is rewriting other people's books. The most that I have heard about it, which we're gonna address is in the articles later, where one person said that it is harder to Google and get the information that you want to get when there's a lot of noise around the topic. And yeah, that is true, but that doesn't just impact the Jewish people, that impacts everybody. Many pagans argue that Lilith was originally pagan, but this is completely false. Historically, the figure of Lilith first appeared in a class of wind and storm demons known as Lilith in summer circa 3000 BCE. Corresponding versions of the demon were found in ancient Babylonian culture, eventually influencing the demonology of medieval rabbinic Judaism. New World Encyclopedia Lilith. A simple Wikipedia search answers this question as it states: Lilith, female demonic figure of Jewish folklore. Her name and personality are thought to be derived from a class of Mesopotamian demons called Lilu, feminine Lilitu, and the name is usually translated as night monster. The quote that they're using is entirely disassembling their own argument. I don't know how they noticed that, because there was quite a lot of words that said, oh, ancient Babylonian figure takes influence from this, takes influence from that. It is very obvious that it's not a thing that originated in the culture itself. Therefore, it's quite weird to claim that it is owned by said culture. If we're gonna just read an excerpt from the Library of Lilith, this is an actual document that is uploaded because Library of Lilith is a library of everything to do with Lilith. And this is a text of a Sumerian tablet. And it is from containing part of Gilgamesh epic, which has recently been published in the... I'm not gonna try to pronounce that. But anyway, let's just go to the relevant bit. Let's skip quite a lot of the whole story, the zoo bird had placed his young in its crown, and in its midad, the demoness Lilith has built her house. But Gilgamesh, informed of Inanna's distress, rushes to her aid. Making light of his weighty armor, the giant slays the dragon with his huge bronze axe, 7 talents, and 7 minas in weight. I'm sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses. I should have definitely put them on. Thereupon the zoo bird flees with his young to the mountain, while Lilith, terror-stricken, tears down her house and escapes to the desert. Lilith, in that myth, was seen as a light-hearted, laughing maiden that is, for one thing, called Lilith. Secondly, the roots of the tree, this is like a very life world representing tree, would have been associated with underworld, so she effectively took control of the underworld and the death part of the life and death cycle, which is very close to what we know Lilith for, isn't it? And that is a tablet from Sumer about their legend. So when you take a name, a demon, a spirit from another culture, and put it in your own folk story that doesn't really land in your holy books, by the way, how can you then, a good 1,000 and a bit years later, be like, it belongs to me? It doesn't make a lot of sense. Judaism is a close practice, and we need to stop appropriating it. Just because they share the same name and origin does not mean Lilith is pagan. Just because they share the same name and origin. Oh god. Does that mean that people, when they're approached and somebody goes, you're culturally appropriating this thing, go, oh, well, you see, just because they share the same name and origin doesn't mean that I'm worshipping the Jewish one. Because that... I said I'm gonna be nice. It's just that this circular reasoning has so much holes in it. But because there is a narrative to push, because that is the nice thing, because you're trying to be an ally and trying to help a specific group of people, and you don't want to be seen as bad by discriminating, you're taking a stance that you can't arrive to logically, so your way of getting there just becomes very illogical. She originates from Judaism. Link to a link. This also applies to any form of studying Jewish mysticism and traditions. Leave close practices alone. Now, there is a blog quote in here. The fetishization of Judaism and Lilith in particular, within ceremonial occultism and new wave of New Age, goddess-focused spirituality created a perfect storm for Lilith to be picked up and flown away with. As you can imagine, Lilith is a deeply complicated figure, and most of these conversations are internal ones within the context of Judaism. Most of the time, Lilith gets reduced to nothing but a spooky, sexy boss babe, bone-thin white woman with absolutely zero nuance or self-awareness. She's the occult world's imaginary goth girlfriend. She's the Claude, forced into goddess archetypes she was never made for. Nonchalantly twisted into whatever entity... I'm not gonna say that word. It is a Jewish word for not Jewish people, but normally it is used in a context that's actually kind of mean, so I'm just gonna say non-Jewish people want her to be, then passed along with ahistorical misinformation about her origins. This content then floods the market, making it extraordinarily difficult for Jewish people to find accurate, reliable information about figures from their own culture. Even better, sometimes people will take the idea that Judaism stole Lilith to perpetuate anti-Semitism, talking about how Jews are rabid monotheists, a genuine quote I have heard once, how we must all just be so sexist and terrible. The Jews ruined paganism, etc. Well, I'm very sorry for this woman for being so much under attack. Everybody has their own opinions. When it comes to Abrahamic religions, the opinions get very, very strong because Abrahamic religions have done quite a lot of shit to other people, but the biggest subsections of it is Christianity and Islam, both religions that were entirely prepared to conquer and convert other cultures. But when it all stems from the same pot, some of that judgment will also unjustly fall onto you because you're part of the pot, and it's the pot that have hurt a lot of people, and they're angry about it. And it's about us making sense, us looking at two countries warring and deciding that you hate a specific country or nationality and that everybody in there is at fault, when that's not the way that it is. But people, when they're hurt or when they carry religious trauma, they will be mean with their arguments. But yes, Lilith did not originate in Judaism. That is not an anti-Semitic statement. Judaism did not necessarily steal it, but they borrowed from stories and characters and mythologies that were around them at the same time, which is how a lot of these religions have done, which is why you can find hell in Christianity. High Norse mythology there with your goddess Hel and her underworld. Some other versions you can find in Greek Bibles, you can find Hades, because there were a lot of words, a lot of borrowed words, a lot of borrowed mythology from other cultures that got incorporated into these growing pots of religion, because that is just the natural way that things flow as far as humanity is concerned. So people declawing Lilith is in general a problem because, well, people that want to practice with Lilith will encounter something that they entirely did not expect, because they're expecting some sort of nurturing, feminine, motherly type of energy, because all women are flat now, I guess, and we're only capable of one thing, which means that all goddesses are the same. That has been a rampant problem with a lot of religions and a lot of female figures in mythology. When if you approach mythology of other cultures, pagan cultures, non-pagan cultures, some of the female characters that are portrayed will be pretty metal and rule over not so nice subjects, portraying feminine as the force of rage and as the force of war is not unseen, as well as portraying feminine as a force of lust and a force of sex. But living in a post-Abrahamic world, the most association that you get with feminine is falls under masculine. Like, you know, there's God, and then there's man, and then there's a woman, and we're gonna take Mother Mary, and she's always nurturing, she's life-giving, she's nice to her babies, seeing a spirit that's entirely opposite to that. For one thing, Lilith were a storm demon that was very aggressive and was blamed for a lot of deaths outside in the middle of the night during storms. It was a wild thing, the same as nature is wild. And later on, she became the Jewish baby killer and pregnant women undertaker, someone that's responsible for sudden infant death syndrome. When you're confronted with that, juxtaposed to it being female, people start jumping through hoops because it makes them very, very uncomfortable. It is not a thing that's associated with femininity and with womanhood, so they want none of that. So whenever they encounter that, they try and strip those parts away, and it just doesn't work very well. It's not just a problem with her being removed from Judaism, where she didn't originate to begin with. It is a problem in general, especially when majority of what actually you're gonna be bombarded with online will be media that will depict her as, well, sexy goth mommy, because she is a popular figure and artists' imaginations run wild, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if your understanding of a spirit is from, let's say, Diablo 4, then you are gonna have no understanding of the spirit. It is weird to take that angle of, oh, it's because of people taking her from Judaism, and it makes it especially difficult for Jewish people. It makes it difficult for Lilithians too. Like, there's a whole religion around that specific figure. Like, what the heck? Great way of making that problem about yourself in particular. Alphabet of John Sira, which is not the right way that I just said it, Alphabet of Ben Sira, sorry, is a satirical work, and it is also the Jewish folktale that got Lilith added to it. It is there online. You can search it up. There are Jewish encyclopedias. There are the holy books. You don't need to go looking for this information. If you know what you're searching for, you're gonna find it fairly easily. If all you do is Google up Lilith, well, yeah, she's not obscure. You cannot make her obscure again. The same way that if you start Googling names from Helva Boss, you're gonna be confusing media with an actual spirit. That's just the way that it is. So we're gonna investigate a couple of links provided, okay? The legend of Lilith, Adam's first wife. According to Jewish folklore, Lilith was Adam's first wife. Though she is not mentioned in the Torah, over the centuries she has become associated with Adam in order to reconcile contradictory versions of creation in Book of Genesis. The biblical book of Genesis contains two contradictory accounts of humanity's creation. The first account is known as the priestly version and appears in Genesis here and here. Here, God fashions man and woman simultaneously. When the text reads, "So God created mankind in its divine image, male and female, God created them." The second account of creation is known as the Yahwistic version and is found in Genesis 2. This is the version of creation that most people are familiar with. God creates Adam, then places him in the Garden of Eden. Not long afterwards, God decides to make a companion for Adam and creates the animals of the land and sky to see if any of them are suitable partners for the man. God brings each animal to Adam, who names it before ultimately deciding that it is not a suitable helper. God then causes a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and while the man is sleeping, God fashions Eve from his side. God performs surgery and removes, like, his ribs, which is quite cruel. When Adam awakes, he recognizes Eve as part of himself and accepts her as his companion. Not surprisingly, the ancient rabbis noticed that the two contradictory versions of creation appear in the book of Genesis, which is called... I'm gonna slaughter the name if I try to pronounce it, so I won't. They solved the discrepancy in two ways. The first version of creation actually referred to Adam's first wife, a first Eve, but Adam was displeased with her, so God replaced her with a second Eve that met Adam's needs. The priestly account describes the creation of an androgyne, a creature that was both male and female. This creature was then split into man and a woman in the Yahwistic account. Although the tradition of two wives, two Eves, appears early on, the interpretation of creation's timeline was not associated with the character of Lilith until the medieval period, as we shall see in the next section. Scholars are not certain where the character of Lilith comes from, though many believe she was inspired by Sumerian myths and female vampires called Lilu, or Mesopotamian myths about succubi, female night demons called Lilin. Lilith is mentioned 4 times in the Babylonian Talmud, but it is not until Alphabet of Ben Sira, about 800-900, that the character of Lilith is associated with the first version of creation. In this medieval text, Ben Sira names Lilith as Adam's first wife and presents a full account of her story. This is the same way that Christians have over-internalized Dante's Inferno, and it became a living pop story about what the religion has without the religion actively having it. It's a very weird thing where suddenly we have this idea of hell and burning and all of that when that's legitimately not in the Bible. And the only time it actually enters the Bible is about King James Bible when they rolled a whole bunch of words into one. This is a very similar thing. Lilith is not there. Lilith gets added later. The story at first is not even about Lilith, but her name then gets tacked on. And that's what we're working with. And now suddenly, nobody can work with Lilith. Why do I say nobody? Well, because people that are Jewish are not gonna work with Lilith, considering that it is a very negative demon. Why would you? And people that are not Jewish are not allowed. So it literally becomes the internet girls. You can't have that one. And I'm sorry, but if people are okay with breaking the taboo to a point where they're working with a demon of death and pregnancy and a demon of storms and wilderness, I don't think that saying, no, you can't do that, will change much, except portray them in a very mean and bad light for absolutely no reason. So now let's proceed to a couple of blog posts, because that was just the explanation of where Lilith enters that whole creation story. If you want the full creation story, it goes something equivalent of God created Adam and Lilith, and Lilith did not submit to Adam. She was all like, nah, why would I lay underneath you? We're like, even man. He was like, no, I don't accept that. That's stupid. You're like underneath me. So she was just like, yeah, whatever, bye, and left. And then Adam complained to God, and God was like, yeah, I'll send some angels to talk with her. If she comes back, that's okay. But if she doesn't, 100 of her kids will have to die a day. Like, a completely normal thing to say. Let's completely not think about just how insane does that sound, especially considering that not her, but her kids. So, like, apparently she's gonna have more than 100 babies a day. I don't know how long a day lasts there, but that's pretty wild in itself. That feels like a curse, and 100 of them will die every single day. And the angels came and talked with her, and she was like, nah, you can threaten me all you want. I'm still not going there. And then she found a better mate. Whoever is Lilith's mate will change depending on whose stock is telling the story. They will place Lucifer there, they will place Samael, they will place Satan, Asmodeus, a whole bunch of names. And in truth, in her original form, she is a wild storm demon. She doesn't really have a mate. Just even painting a mate in there is kind of Though it's nice that the story goes, all these bad guys, they treat women better than Adam. Well, I think your story is painting Adam in a very, very bad light. Not gonna lie, I'm not very charmed with this Adam guy, but it is a story. The stories are wild sometimes, but that's the story that is, and I am seriously shortening it down here. So, back to article reading. Lilith, another form of cultural appropriation by members of witchcraft, and especially the Wiccan community, is using Lilith in their practice. The story of Lilith, Adam's first, is a midrash. Midrashim are retellings of stories in the Torah to help fill holes in the text and explain biblical mysteries. Rabbis wrote them, filling the missing pieces of stories between passages. They become an important way for Jewish people to interact with various interpretations of the Torah. Often it would be taught as if the Midrashim were the way things actually happened. Lilith was first mentioned as an evil entity in the Tanakh, Hebrew Bible, and later from the Midrash in Genesis 1, it is stated how man and woman were created together. Lilith was created at the same time as Adam, therefore she considered herself equal. Ancient rabbinic tradition states that she was a baby-eating demon. If you're ever assaulted by like an Abrahamic religion and they tell you to submit unto man because that was always the plan, you can do something that these people would really not want you to do, because once again it is using a mythological figure that they don't want to see used at all. You could say, yeah, you know how Lilith has like 100 children die a day? Well, I'm part of the line of those that like didn't just like die off after being born. So yeah, I'm a Lilith, so I'm actually equal to man. So you can fuck off, please. Like, you can literally repurpose that story, but it would be seen as fairly disrespectful. But honestly, when the respectful thing, according to religion, is to submit to the authority of man, maybe a little bit disrespect by literally using the symbol of death and pregnancy, sudden infant death syndrome, stopping of procreation, sex for the sake of sex, abortions. We can add abortions into that. Being wild and free. Maybe using that symbol is not actually too bad. Well, it is according to them, but in my opinion, that's a symbol used very appropriately. When Adam and Lilith began to fight, she said, "I will not lie below," and he said, "I will not lie beneath you, but only on top. For you are fit only to be in the bottom position, while I am the superior one." Lilith responded, "We are equal inasmuch as we are both created from the earth. Lilith and Adam were formed from the same substance, so Lilith's argument was more than justified. She pronounced a magical incantation in the name of God and fled. God told Adam, if she agrees to come back, fine. If not, she must permit 100 of her children to die daily. 3 angels were sent to retrieve her, but she refused to return. They threatened to drown her in the sea. She responded with, "Believe me, I was created only to cause sickness to infants. If the infant is male, I have dominion over him for 8 days after his birth, and if female, for 10 days. I do like the fact that she got to select her own time spans. She swore that if she saw the angels' names or forms in an amulet on a child, she would have no power over the infant. She also agreed to have 100 of her children die daily. We still practice this today. We wear amulets for their power as regular charm to ward off evil entities like Lilith. In another story, it was an amulet of her own name. That's why you can find a whole bunch of archaeological amulets with Lilith's name as wards against Lilith. She's also mentioned in the Kabbalah as a figure of cosmic evil. She became the female consort of Samael. They were the great demon of the alphabet of Ben Sira, which was given the name Samuel. Ben Sira, the alphabet of Ben Sira is a satirical text. Kind of like how Dante's Inferno is fiction, but old religions have like a lot of problems, and when people follow them feverishly enough, it can become problematic to whole swatches of society. Everybody's working on it though, so as long as you're not waging war on other countries based on your religion, pat yourself on the head, you have officially surpassed the Middle Ages. Maybe let's never go back there again. Lilith in modern Judaism, modern Jewish feminists in the 1970s transformed Lilith's image into a feminist icon. Modern Judaism shifted from viewing Lilith as an evil spirit to role model for Jewish women. Her story emulates her ferocious strength, which must be respected and admired. I don't think that modern Judaism does any such thing. If you look at any actual practitioners of the religion, a lot of them would rather side with the good guys than what is essentially seen as evil in their books, and that is, it's self-explanatory as to why. However, her story and her origin has once again appropriated by non-Jews. Many will mistake her as a sexy, sensual goddess. There is no evidence of her being a goddess in any way, shape, or form. Another claim is that she is a fierce protector among women. This in turn is false. As mentioned previously, she is a stealer of babies, and pregnant women wore amulets to ward her off. How can she be a fierce protector of women if she seeks out pregnant women to harm children, or perhaps cause trouble during pregnancy? Let me help you with this. The person that wrote this article, not every woman will want to have children. In a society ruled by an Abrahamic religion, you do fall under man, and your role is to have children and to educate them. That is where you fall in. But when we remove that from society, there are a lot of childless women that don't want that want either equal childless partnerships or want to be on their own. A lot of these women find freedom in a wild storm demon because wild storm demon is also very much on their own. They're not the kind of woman that submits to getting sexually assaulted. They're not the kind of woman that would allow that to happen. They're not the kind of woman that stays in the nest and has a lot of children. So if you need an abortion, if you want revenge onto men that are trying to turn you into that against your will, if you want to assert your own freedom, fierce protector of women. I mean, you are in itself kind of performing Lilith's function by choosing to not reproduce. You are population controlling yourself by making that choice. You are emulating her by making those life choices, and therefore she becomes an ally, not an enemy. It's all about life decisions and where your life road takes you and what's in store. And this is not to say that there's absolutely no women practicing with Lilith that have had children or that have children. But in general, this is how you can reconcile what you see as bad and what other people see as good. You guys just don't share the same values, and there's nothing wrong with that. Without any proper education myself, I was unaware of Lilith's proper origins. I began to call her on as a goddess, not realizing it could have been calling upon another deity. I had briefly started working with her when I sought advice from a fellow Jewish witch about using Lilith in our practices. She informed me that many Jewish practitioners do not seek her out, especially if they have children or pregnant women in their life for, well, obvious reasons. She is a demon and extremely hard to call up and work with. That is true even for people that do work with Lilith. That is true for anyone that has experienced Lilith. She is a free soul. She's not obliged to work with you. It is one-off demons of freedom that happen to be feminine and tied to a lot of feminine destruction. She does not take to begging, and she operates on her own free will. Many Jewish witches are extremely wary of working with her because she's not one to be called upon lightly. That would be true for all Liliths. If these people did not try to gatekeep, they would definitely be friends with a lot of Lilithians. Therefore, if you happen to work with her, know her actions may be unpredictable and you could be putting yourself and others in danger. Destructive spirits are not necessarily, oh my god, lol, so random. And oftentimes, whatever gods or spirits you decide to work with will have absolutely no bearing on anyone around you. So that is extra paranoia that's not necessarily necessary. I recently ended up giving up my brief attempt to work with her for two reasons. First, I struggle with fertility and I have pre existing conditions. Inviting a stealer into my practice is foolish. I agree, unless you want to come to terms with the fact that you are infertile. In that case, inviting a spirit of fertility ending spirit might be a good way to go around that. Secondly, I have a goddess of Jewish origin with whom I work, and I'm happy with her. I also work with Hashim. To my non-Jews who still find the need to appropriate Lilith, you see how this article talks about fairly normal and relatable things, and then comes back to appropriation with no basis about that? And ignore us when we ask you to stop. Be aware of who you're calling on. Know that you may be summoning an entirely different entity, and if you do not properly educate yourself on her origins, which is terrifying to think about. She's not your sexy, sensual goddess. I don't know where people are getting that idea, actually. I never saw Lilith that way. It's literally the same as I know Loki from Avengers or whatever superhero movie incorporated Loki. Like, if your knowledge about a spirit ends at a show or media or cartoon that you liked, you didn't even research them. You watch the popular media. How does that even work? I mean, even in popular media, she's often depicted as a fairly strong entity. So I have literally no idea where people are pulling this idea that she's this sexy, sensual, friendly goddess. She's not your sexy, sensual goddess. She is not yours to include in your practice. She is a free spirit, man. Whoever she wants to work with, she will. Please understand how significant she is to our religion. Not at all. That's the thing, not at all. She's not in your book, she's in one satirical story. She doesn't tend to enter Judaism in any particular strong way these days, outside of being a superstition that you ward against. Why do you care that somebody's practicing with your boogeyman? The boogeyman that you borrowed to begin with. What you can do instead is find deities that share similar traits with her that come from open practices. For instance, Talamia was a female demon of night who devoured children. She originates from Greek mythology. I feel uncomfortable with your spirit choice. Go and choose a different spirit, please. How about now? Judaism is a close practice. One cannot take our sacred texts and entities and choose what would work best for them, especially without regarding the historical and religious significance they have. Unless you're born into religion or convert, our sacred practices are off limits. If you're born into the religion or convert, I assure you, you're not going to be practicing with Lilith. That's not in your religion. That would be like being like, oh yeah, I am a Christian. I worship Satan. People would be like, do you mean you're a Satanist? And you're like, no. You underestimate how important Satan is to my religion. People would be like, you have the completely wrong takeaway. You no longer fall under the name that you think you fall under. I would like to acknowledge that I'm still new to this and want to shout out Jew Witches, a brilliant source who has helped me formulate this article and better understand my Jewish witchcraft. Please follow her page and subscribe to her Patreon. So, you see, all of this basis is built upon very young women that got spooked, that are still very fresh and very new to their own religion that they're trying to practice. And then they write this and go, well, I am still new to this. And that's how a whole bunch of bollocks begins. It tends to begin with teenagers. It tends to begin with very young adults that don't properly understand the context of what they're reading and what they're looking at. And then it just devolves into a wider gatekeeping and, well, wider putting down of a lot of other individuals and a lot of other religions. There is no open-mindedness there. There is no acceptance. There is no attempt to investigate. There is a very young understanding of a specific religion or whatever they're trying to practice, because if they're saying that Judaism is, you don't understand how much it means for our practice and our religion, if you were just approaching Lilith from a Wiccan point of view, are you sure that you practice Judaism? How long ago have you started converting? Because I don't think that you are an expert on this religion. And it used to be that Jewish women would come out and look at these statements and go, what? No. And then the internet would really shit on them for not going with what's popular at this time. But like I said, it's getting quite a lot better. Now, we have Library of Lilith. I am gonna be putting this link in the description for this video because it is a very good resource. It is run by a person that I know. They don't really accept internet people as friends, so I couldn't really call them a friend. But if the circumstances were different and they were less wary of internet people, I would like to call them a friend, but never mind, we don't live in the same region, we don't interact on a day-to-day basis, so their viewpoint is more than justified. They have compiled a whole bunch of things about Lilith, such as sigils, names, different mythologies, and everywhere where she is known in some way or another, in the occult, in Europe, in Middle East, and a whole bunch of different entities that kind of have an intertwining link that kind of all come together under the name of Lilith. And there is one thing that I want to share, which is lists given by Lilith when it comes to the name of Lilith. Because here is the thing, a lot of like Jewish protective necklaces, they won't just have like the name Lilith, they will have more than the name Lilith. And that is because Lilith goes by many names, which honestly suggests that she is not necessarily a singular being and that she keeps the whole story of being Storm Demon, Litu, of being a mass of beings that are just kind of unified under this name. And this is not the only being that is treated like that in their lore. And there is quite a few of beings where people are like, oh, here's the name, they're one. That means that we're like talking about one like we would about a person. No. There are quite a few beings that are actually a mass or multiple different beings that all go by the same name. It's just that the way that we culturally interpret it changes. And the fact that there is a story of Elijah in which Lilith gives her list of names suggests that she's not a singular being. She gives quite a few names. Abeko, Abito, Abitu, Amizo, Abizu, Badna, Elio, Ita, Izorpo, Kali, Kea, Kokos, Lilith, Odam, Pertasa, Batrota, Podo, Citrina, Taito. So honestly, whenever you're accused of appropriation, if you're worshipping Lilith, you could technically sneak into these communities by being a dick and using a name that's on this list that means the exact same thing, but that wouldn't be widely recognized the same as when I'm talking about Lucifer. If I don't want to scare people, I can be like, oh, Phosphorus, I worship Phosphorus. Phosphorus is my god, because there is no such association with it. So for majority of those names, most people will have no idea what you're talking about. But this is like not an isolated thing. There is a Greek tale that includes extra names, and there's another Greek tale that includes different names. There's a Romanian tale that includes other names. There are Syriac stories that include other names. Like, there are a lot of cultures that had Lilith at some point. She doesn't just like belong to one culture, but at some point we just took her and we're like, yeah, she belongs to these people in particular. I suppose my takeaway from this whole thing is if your culture has a specific being that is shared with other cultures, claim it first online. Great if you can get like your 14-year-old daughter to do it for you. If she's just gonna like stand up on a platform on a TikTok and be like, actually, guys, it's very problematic. This thing belongs to us. And then just to throw in a wrench to make sure that nobody else can ever do this ever again, be like, yeah, we're okay with sharing it with you guys. It's like a completely open thing. That way you're gonna end these kind of discussions early on. But really, don't be a dick. Life is hard to navigate for a whole bunch of people, and people grow and change over time, and their opinions change from what it has been at their very early adulthood. And it's a thing that happened like a couple of years ago, and unfortunate that some hangups from that area, people that did not move on with the times, are still hurting some communities, but that is your internet outrage culture for you. Everybody would really benefit from being able to just ground and think things over before we start a whole outrage mob to begin with. But I suppose that is a lot less interesting than starting a whole outrage mob to begin with. I know that this video has rambled on. It's just a thing that was on my mind that I wanted to talk about. I hope that I have presented my opinion well enough. I have a feeling that most people that would be upset by this aren't gonna be clicking into it because the name does not outright scream what I'm talking about. And that they definitely wouldn't have the attention span to listen to somebody ramble on for an hour. If you're still here, I would like your opinion. In particular, why do you think Lilith? Why did the focus fall under Lilith? There are other focuses that fell onto other things that are seen as belonging to the Jewish culture, like the Kabbalah. But all of the other things, they were like practices. They weren't a spirit, and more particularly, they weren't a rather obscure spirit when it comes to the religion itself that only participates in the religion from an outside source that is not part of the main source, but is a story that then only received that name being added to the story at about 900s. Why them in particular? Like, once again, this is the most random point to become upset about and to ramble on. And it's not like Lilithians are that far spread. I mean, demonology in itself is very, very small. If you look at the Lilith subreddit, that's like a couple thousand members at best. It is a very niche thing. Like a lot of smaller faiths, it is a very, very niche thing. So somebody woke up one day and decided, I am very specifically offended by these couple thousand people. That is... Couldn't you have gone even smaller? Like, it's like waking up one day and going, fuck you, village there in particular. And not even like a big village, but like a super small one. Like, fuck this group of 800 people. Like, in a world of billions, if there was a number that's absolutely not a problem, this would be it. So, I'm confused. Help. If you want to talk about it in the comment section, please do. I feel like I have hopefully explained myself well enough. I'm gonna link all the things that I used in this video down in the description below. And if you're interested in Lilith, please visit the Library of Lilith. It is a great resource. Once again, it is in the description down below. If you can listen to a woman ramble for an hour and 7 minutes straight, you probably have enough attention span in order to do your own research. So I wish you luck with that. Thank you for watching, and I'm gonna see the regulars of my channel next week when I fall into probably doing Daggerfall, because I do a lot of gaming on this channel, and I will probably be uploading season 2 of the tabletop RPG that I'm playing. I'm gonna be making these occult videos only when something comes up or when I have a space in my upload schedule, and plenty of spaces for the past few weeks because my tabletop was on hiatus. And I also had plenty of things to talk about. This one was especially dramatic. I am very surprised that this went down in 2024, but what can you do? Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope I'm gonna see you again sometime soon. Toodaloo.